Yeah, got some hands up. So I guess to kick off then. So as I said, any questions throughout, just throw them into the chat, and there'll be times where we're waiting on ChatGPT to load and whatnot, and we can answer them then. So the first thing I want to just talk about is it's not just ChatGPT. There's actually loads of AI models, and some of them are quite good, in fact. So for sure, ChatGPT is the most popular, but even within that, there's a couple of different models. So GPT-4o, and the O stands for Omni, is the most advanced. It's also the fastest, but it's not the cheapest. GPT 3.5 is the cheapest. But some other ones that are worth mentioning are Meta AI, which is basically Facebook. And the reason that that's worth mentioning is that they're open source, so they're not behind like a massive company like a Google or whatever. The other one that's notable is Claude 3. This is kind of like a new player, so it's not one of the big companies like Google or Meta or Microsoft. They're kind of like a startup that, for whatever reason, managed to really produce a fantastic model, and we're going to be using it today. Yeah. So when you're actually using ChatGPT, you can actually switch between the models, and we're going to see that in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to start off pretty basic, and then we're going to gradually get a bit more advanced. So I'm going to jump over to ChatGPT, and we're going to ask it just to write a simple recipe for us. So we're going to get a recipe for spaghetti bolognese, something which I quite enjoy eating. But one thing I always find is it might not be in the units that you want. So these things are all trained on American data for the most part. So quite often you'll end up with cups and things, which is not something we really use in Europe. So one thing you can do is you can just say like change to metric. And I just want to give an example here of how these models have the conversational awareness. So if that was writing code for us, we could say, actually, I don't want it to be written in Python. I want you to write it in JavaScript for me. And it'll take the information from the whole conversation thread in order to inform the next answer. You can also create things like tables. So it has what's known as a markdown interpreter in the browser itself. So it can do quite interesting formatting. So put this into a table. And what it does in the background, if anyone's interested, it's using Markdown, which is just a way to represent a table using text, and then ChatGPT renders it as a table. The other thing that you can do natively within this interface is generate images. So you can generate images using DALL-E 3, but it's built into this now. So you can just go generate an image of the meal, and you'll get a little loading box, and this is going to actually generate an image now of this meal that we asked for. So as I say, this is called DALL-E 3. It's not my favorite image generator, to be honest. And if you're doing anything more complicated than simple images, it's probably not going to be good for you. But we're going to be using something later called Midjourney, and that is quite good. But just to kind of show you that this is kind of a unique image, it's not just taken from Google. You can go, add more cheese to the image, for example. And again, it has that kind of conversational awareness where you can basically talk to the chat, if you like, or talk to the thread. Now we have a bit more cheese. That's all well and good, right? So let's start getting into some slightly more useful examples, right? So we have this act as terminology. So you can say, in this example, we're going to act as my skilled lawyer, but you could say act as my programmer, act as my HR consultant, act as my tax advisor. So we're going to say, for the purpose of this, act as my skilled lawyer. I'm going to create a new chat. So when you create new chats, or when you start a new kind of topic, you're better off creating a new chat, because you don't want ChatGPT to get confused with the previous context. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Facebook end user license agreement as an example, as something which realistically we probably don't all read as much as we should. And we're going to get ChatGPT to parse this for us and bring out the key terms of it. So I have this prompt that I have at the top here. So your task is to review the Facebook terms of service and identify key clauses and sections that should be clear that the user should be particularly aware of. So let's see what comes out of this. So there's 128,000 token context window in this, which basically means you can copy and paste in 128,000 tokens. Tokens are kind of similar to characters, but they're not exactly equal to a character. I'll actually cover later what a token is. So you can see here it brings out the key clauses and sections related to the Facebook end user license agreement. That is in there, but it's buried. So for example, here's something interesting. Deleted content may take up to 90 days to be removed from Meta systems. So although you have the right to have it removed, it's saying here that it might actually take up to 90 days, for example. Then what we might ask after this is we might say something like, write me a letter to Facebook to delete all my data. I live within the EU, so we're given a context that it might want to use, like, you don't need to specifically say GDPR, but because you'll say within the EU, it'll know GDPR. And now it's going to be able to write us a letter to Facebook wanting to delete all of our data. And we can ask for we can ask, you know, to change certain parts or to, you know, emphasize other parts, or even to write it in a different language. Maybe your language isn't English and you want to write it in another language. It can do this, no problem. It's very good at languages, actually, very good. So that's act as, and for this purpose we did act as a lawyer, but you could do act as a tax advisor, act as a programmer, anything like this. This is a big red flag. AI can make mistakes, so just be aware of that. Slightly more interesting use cases, you can use it to talk to PDFs. So I have here a prompt to act as an annual report reviewer, and then I'm going to upload the NVIDIA annual report and see if it can give us some insights on that. So I have it already here because it's going to take a little second to upload, so I've just done that ahead of time. One thing that I want to just point out for this is that it can seem, oh dear, let's refresh that. Always get these problems when you're doing a live demo on it. Let's try that again. That's going to upload now. One thing I just want to point out, when you're uploading these PDFs, it gives the impression that it's looking through the entire PDF. It's not. It's just taking like a summary. So this is going to produce an answer now, which is going to sound like it has read the entire PDF cover to cover, and it has extracted all the useful information. But it's actually only been able to take a summary of it, like an excerpt, and it's kind of inferring the rest. So just be aware of that. It is still pretty useful, but just be aware it's not actually taking 100% of the PDF text and using that to inform its response. But as I say, it does seem to be able to summarize it very well. But again, just for background, it's not taking 100%, even though it is making it look like it is. So there's some interesting information about NVIDIA. It's doing very well, I think is the summary, pretty much. We've got Jensen Young here. And you can ask follow-up questions about this, but I just wanted to show that you can upload documents and PDFs. Something else that you can use is you can upload images. So for example, I have an image here of what we might call in Ireland a kettle lead, but it has an actual name. Like if we were buying this online, we'd have an actual name. We'd have to, you know, we go onto Radionics or whatever. We'd need to actually type in the name, for example. Now for a kettle lead, we could probably figure it out. But just as an example, it can actually identify that kind of thing. So I can just upload an image. So imagine you take a picture on your phone and you just say, what is this? What is this called? And it's going to come back. It's going to analyze the image and it's going to be able to come back with the technical name. So according to this, it's an IEC 13 power connector. I've even heard of people taking photographs of food and asking how many calories are in the food. Let's move on then to our next example. So this is actually one of my favorite uses of ChatGPT actually. So it's able to analyze data from Excel. So I have a little prompt here that just says I have an Excel data sheet and need to visualize it, you know, produce some graphs so I can better understand the data. So I have it uploaded ahead of time, but let's see if this works this time because it may not. Yeah, it didn't this time either. Let's try again. Let's hit regenerate. See what happens. Okay, So this is going to take a little bit of time now because it is actually going to search through the majority of the data in the Excel sheet. So I'll just see if I can show you here. So this ChatGPT has a Python interpreter underneath it. So it's actually able to use like basic Python code in order to, in this case, access the CSV file, pull out information, and then it's going to use the matplotlib Python library to actually produce graphs. So in a second, we're going to be able to see graphs being produced here. So the data that I uploaded was from America, and it was in relation to electric vehicle sales. So we should be able to get some information in a second in kind of a graph form that kind of visually shows us what the main points of the data should be. So it is going to just take a bit of a second to keep going. I see a question there, isn't Midjourney paid? Yes, Midjourney is paid. I believe there is a free tier, but yes, Midjourney is paid. Just on the price of all these things, so there's on ChatGPT and Gemini. Gemini is the Google version. They have free tiers, but you'll be timed out after a certain amount of usage, and then pretty much everyone has decided it's about $20 per month for the paid plan. ChatGPT is probably the handiest. You don't even need to log in anymore. You previously did, but you don't need to anymore. You can just literally go to the website and go to it. Now you will lose certain features like the ability to come back to your previous threads and that kind of thing. Now we're starting to get the graphs. So this is using Python matplotlib library to produce these graphs. So as I say here, looks like, for example, plug-in hybrids. We don't sell as many of them as battery electric vehicles. Yeah. So this is one of my favorite things, is it's able to produce these graphs from data from Excel just by uploading it. So another one of my favorites is writing code. So let's write a simple Windows bash file. So what I want to do is I want to write a Windows bash file to transfer all .csv files from a folder on a PC to a folder on a server. And anything with text, so programming in particular, ChatGPT excels at, or any of these AI models excel at. And it's just absolutely fantastic what it can do. And notice that it's actually going to do some other stuff beyond what I asked it. So I asked it to copy files from a folder on a PC to a folder on a server, but it's actually going a bit above and beyond that. First of all, it's checking if the directory exists to start off with. Then it's checking if the source directory exists, and then it's transferring the files. And what else is doing? Yeah. So what it's not doing is it didn't check if the files have successfully copied. So in that case, you could say to it, check that the files make it to the destination. And now it's going to take the original code and update it based on my new prompt. And it's pretty fast. GPT-4 is pretty fast. Not the fastest. GPT 3.5 is the fastest. So I can switch to GPT 3.5 here if I wanted to, but it's not as smart. So if you're doing a slightly simpler task, you can switch to that and it'll be much faster. Yeah, and then you think, you know what? Actually, bat files, not a fan. I'm going to do a PowerShell script instead. So rewrite in PowerShell. And it's just simple to say rewrite PowerShell. Spelling, grammar is not important with these AI models. You can literally type, as long as it roughly makes sense, it'll intuit what you want. So I got some, just while waiting on that, got some comments coming through. So this is what yeah, is ChatGPT the best tool to write code, or is there a better AI tool? Good question. So basically, these AI models keep leapfrogging each other. So up until probably 2 weeks ago, I would have said ChatGPT is the best for writing code. Currently, the best for writing code, in my opinion, is Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which is this, we'll be coming on to that in a minute. Only released a couple of weeks ago. It's now kind of leapfrog GPT-4 4.0, and I think it's probably the best at the minute. But they are very similar, but I think Claude just edges it. So there we have our PowerShell script. And then, for example, you might have your PowerShell step. This is great, but how do I run this? How do I run this? So then you just ask how to run this, and then it's gonna tell you exactly how you run it. And then if it doesn't come up, if it doesn't give you the answer what you're looking for, you can just keep asking follow-up questions until it gives you an answer that works for you. Why is it better? It just seems to produce better results, but it also has this new feature called artifacts, which will actually render graphics in real time. So I'll show you that in a second. That's one of the reasons why it's better, is because for say front-end development, it actually rendered in real time. You can see it in the page, which is something that this cannot do, which is something ChatGPT cannot do. Well, it can't do it yet. I'm sure they'll copy each other. So anyway, Claude 3, made by a company called Anthropic. Anthropic is a startup. It's not one of the big companies like Google or Meta. These guys, so they've kind of come out of nowhere, to be honest. But they have a fantastic model. Here to create a SaaS landing page. That's just a software as a service landing page. Basically just a home page for your website. So if we go over to Claude, this is Claude 3, and see I have here Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and you can change to whatever one you want, but at the moment this is the best model. Now this is still a beta feature, so we're going to see how we get on with this live demo, whether this works. Sometimes the artifacting doesn't work very well. Let's have a look. So it's going to detect that it's code, and then it's going to start using the little artifact feature, which is this here on the left, on the right side. And when it finishes, it should render it on the page. So we should see a landing page for a little website on the right hand side in a moment once this renders out. So let's just take a look at the comments. So I used to change code, but I usually tell it to make the least amount of change, otherwise it runs away with itself. It can do that, yeah. You kind of have to give it quite specific prompts sometimes, so it doesn't run away with itself. So you can see here it's generating pricing cards, pricing tiers, footer. Let's see if we got lucky. Okay. This is what I'm getting at. So this is actually a rendering window. So it actually rendered out what it produced. This is like a landing page. Like imagine if you're buying like Netflix or something, you're gonna have to know the key features, how it works. A testimonials page with your customers, pricing plans. And you can also toggle this and see the code itself. And then again, because these things all have conversational awareness, you can say, make blue the main color. Let's say. And then it will go off and make blue the main color. And when you have multiple components, so it's not just, so this landing page will be one file, we'll say, but you can actually have, say, multiple files, and they'll all appear here. So then every time you put a prompt in here which requires a modification to one of your files for your website or whatever it is, it'll only change the one that's relevant, and you'll have a consistent list here on the side of all your up-to-date code for each code file. So I've got some comments here, so I'm just going to read this comment. Is it a feature of only ChatGPT that makes a summary of documents, or is it across all AI models? How effective would it be for checking documents against each other, word for word? Obviously, this would be simple enough code extract, but would AI do this? So as long as you can copy and paste in the information, all the AI models will do a pretty good job of comparison. Uploading documents, Claude can do that as well, but where Claude really shines is programming. They're pretty equal on the other elements, to be honest. Moving on to Gemini, Google's offering. It was previously called Bard, but they've now sort of rebranded to Gemini. So they're very similar as well, but they have a couple of. So I'm only going to cover the kind of new features, or the features that they have that the other ones don't. So this is quite interesting. What they have here is they kind of have like a kind of fact-checking kind of element to their model. So a lot of the problem with these AI models is that if you're not asking for something that has a definite answer, so like programming, it either works or like the code either works or it doesn't, it's fine. But if you were asking it to write you like an essay or something, then and it was producing facts, we'll say, you wouldn't be 100% sure if that information was correct. But there is a few tools or add-ins to these AI models which can kind of help that, and Google has one of them. So what I want to show now is there's a button here where you can compare the information that this produces against Google itself to see if there is matches. So if I press this button, it's going to double check the response it produced against actual sources found on Google, and it's going to kind of highlight them in green if it's found something that matches up with the responses produced. So you can see here, it's basically saying that we find content similar to this online. So this is kind of an interesting way that Google is doing kind of fact checking of what the model produces. So this is kind of unique. ChatGPT doesn't do this. ChatGPT can search the internet, but it doesn't have this ability to fact check the information. And what we'll be covering later is something called perplexity, and their whole idea is that every sentence that they produce should have a source associated with it, and it's very good for finding out information that's up to date. So, for example, you could ask about the recent score in the Euros, for example. So what else does Gemini do? It does drafts. So all the AI models do this, but they have a nice interface. So you can see multiple drafts. Not loading at the minute, of course, but if it did load, there would be multiple drafts. There we go. So you can see multiple drafts if you're curious to see the other kind of variations that it produced. Something else that Gemini does, which is quite interesting actually, is the ability to modify a certain section of the prompt. So, because what you'll find is you'll ask. So, for example, if I say, write a short, or in fact, I can just use this. So basically what happens is if you want to write an email or something, you'll want to modify certain sections, and with ChatGPT you have to get it to rewrite out the whole thing. Whereas with Gemini you can just ask it to rewrite a section. So you can say, I just use one of the predefined ones. So I could say make this shorter, make this one section shorter. Because what you'll find is you'll often be wanting to use these models to write emails or to write sort of sections of text, and you'll find there's a small issue with a bit of it. But in order to just change that bit, you're going to have to regenerate the whole thing. But not with Gemini. Gemini actually allows you to select what you want the model to change, and then only hone in on that, which is very useful, I think. And none of the rest of the models can do this. So you can see now it's a bit like this. It's a bit like the streamers, like the Netflix and whatnot. You kind of have to have a bit of all the different models in order to get a full feature set. If you want to watch all the different shows, you're going to need to have you're going to have Netflix and Prime, whatever else. It's a bit like that with these AI models. You kind of need to have everything to get a full complement of kind of features. Another interesting thing with the Google Gemini is they have integration with Google services. I find these have limited use, to be honest, but it's worth mentioning. So you can say give me a list of, or I suppose, show me the best pizza shops in NYC. And it should detect that that's a sort of maps related question, and it's going to actually pull the information from Google Maps for one, but then also show you on Google Maps as well. This is probably something that's going to get better, and Google do have an advantage because they do have Google Maps and whatnot. And then you can say, okay, show me flights from Dublin to NYC. This is probably the most useful one in terms of integration with Google services. So you can ask about flights, you can ask about cheaper flights, you can ask about, you can ask your query in worded terms. I don't want any layovers and this kind of thing. And then you can click directly on these and it'll take you straight to Google Flights. So I can see this being something that gets a lot better later on, but I find this sort of limited use cases for this. It's still just quicker just to go to the website most of the time. The other thing is that I've been using is just I pretty much never use Google anymore. If I need to know how to do something, apart from finding out up-to-date information, we'll say. But if you just want to know how to do something, especially on a computer, you just go straight to these AI models and it'll give you like a detailed, like standard operating procedure style output on how to do this. So if I want to know, how do I map a network drive of Windows? It'll give an exact detailed instructions, no more looking up on Google or going to Stack Overflow or any of these sort of websites to find information like this. And pretty much anything to do with a computer, no matter how small, it will have ingested data at some point and it will know how to do it. It's just fantastic. Using Google for these kind of tasks now is pretty much redundant, especially since ChatGPT has a free tier, so everybody can use it for these kind of simple tasks. Tells you everything you possibly want to know. So that's probably one of the main things I use AI for. Speech to text. So speech to text is available on the apps and on the Mac app. It's not there's no Windows app yet for ChatGPT, but it is available on the Mac app, so I can show you here. So speech to text is actually fantastic. So there's an OpenAI model called the Whisper API, and their speech to text is absolutely fantastic. So because it's the text that it transcribes is parsed by ChatGPT, you don't need to speak very well. You can use colloquialisms, you can use slang, and it will figure it out. So just as an example here. Yeah, hey, I need you to write an email to John to tell him about the bad news about how the project's going to be delayed. There's some vendor issues, but I don't want you to blame anybody in the email. But we will have to tell him it is vendor related because it isn't our issue. But I need you to very subtly and very get it across to him that it's no one's fault necessarily, but in fairness, it isn't our fault. So I was trying to use some colloquialisms there and not speak very well. But you see, it's able to take that information and it transcribed it very well. And then it's able to write the email as a result of that. So you can imagine this is available on the ChatGPT app on the iPhone and on Android phone. And I'm just using it here on the Mac app. There isn't a Windows app yet, as I said. But I can see this. I use this a lot actually for when I want to give ChatGPT a very long prompt. I often use speech to text and tell it what I want. It's use this first now rather than typing it if it's something long. And as I say, what's fantastic about this is you don't need to speak very well. You can even go and then you can even say at the end, go, actually, yeah, forget about everything I just said before that. This is now what I want you to do. So this is one of the great features with ChatGPT is they have this fantastic speech to text. The other models have it as well, like the Google Gemini and whatnot, but for sure the ChatGPT one is much better. For sure. Also available in the ChatGPT app is this voice chat feature. And this is a bit dystopian. This is them emulating a person and talking back to you as if you're a person. So you have to hit this little headphone icon down here. So again, it's available on the iPhone app and the Android app, but I can demonstrate here on the Mac app. This can be a bit flaky, so we'll see how it goes. Hello, ChatGPT. I want you to tell me everything you know about the Roman Empire.
Sure. I can give you an overview of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was one of the largest and most influential civilizations in history. It began in 27 BC.
Just checking, can people hear that? I may not have shared this with audio, so you may not have been able to hear that.
We can, yeah.
Excellent. Continue, please.
No worries. I understand this is a text-based conversation, so I didn't hear anything. If there's more information or a specific aspect of the Roman Empire you'd like to delve into, just let me know. Got it. If there's anything.
I'm particularly interested in the aqueducts.
Roman aqueducts were an impressive feat of engineering designed to transport water from distant sources into cities and towns. They played a crucial role in providing clean water for drinking, bathing, and irrigation, contributing significantly to the health and growth of Roman cities.
Get the idea with that. It's able to speak back to you like a person, and what they're actually working on at the minute is adding vision to this. So what they're going to do is they're going to allow it to be able to see your computer screen, and then you have a natural language conversation with it as well on top of that. So say you have an issue on your computer, you don't know how to do something. That's the demos that they've showed. Is you're going to be able to say, here, how do I do this on this computer? And it's going to say, okay, well, I see you're on this screen. I want you to go to this button here and do this. That's where this is going. They haven't released this yet. But the other thing that you can do with the voice feature is you can kind of create your own apps a little bit. So you can create your own translation apps is the example that they always show. So this goes. So what they showed in their demo, and what I'm going to show now, is if you tell it, okay, when you hear English, translate to Spanish, and when you hear Spanish, translate to English. And this is like, imagine if you're in a foreign country, you can literally have your own real-time or near real-time translation app that you configure effectively. So we'll try this here. Hey, when you hear English, translate to Spanish, and when you hear Spanish, I want you to translate it to English.
Sure, I can do that. ¿Cómo te gustaría empezar?
Yeah, I want a table for 4 people, please.
Sí, quiero una mesa para 4 personas, por favor.
Sí, tenemos una mesa para 4 personas aquí. ¿Está bien?
Yes, we have a table for 4 people here. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we're going to sit down now.
Sí, está bien. Sí, vamos a sentarnos ahora.
¿Quieres algo para beber o comer?
Do you want something to drink or eat?
Yeah, no, I'm all right. Yeah, so that was just an example there of you can kind of create your own apps. Like if you're learning a language or something, you could say, okay, I want you to act as my language teacher. I'm at this level. I want you to, this is the lesson we're having today. You can kind of create your own little bespoke apps, if you like, just by explaining with natural language what you want. So let's take a look. Okay. Moving on then to the OpenAI API. So an API is an application program interface. So this is the background of the smarts of ChatGPT under the hood. So then you can in this case you can definitely create your own custom apps. So here I have a little Python example. So what I have here is I have some customer feedback. So what we're going to do here is what's called sentiment analysis. So I have some customer feedback, but it's in human readable English, and this one's in Spanish as an example as well. But how do we know if this is positive or negative? Imagine we had thousands of these or millions of these. How do we know if it's positive or negative? Like there's no way we can figure that out using a normal Python script or something like that, because it's human readable text. It's to do with tone and that kind of thing. We can't figure it out using conventional programming, but we can use AI. So what I have here is a little Python script that reads in the information from the customer feedback CSV file. We only have a few entries, but we could have millions hypothetically. And this is how you program these AI apps, if you like. You literally just use natural language. So you say you are a sentiment and analyst, rather. Analyze the sentiment of the given feedback and provide a short response. So we're going to get a little response, like a message that you'd send to the customer. So if they had a good experience, we're going to send them a positive message, and if they had a bad experience, we're going to say, sorry, hope you come back, etc. Someone said how many slides? I think we've got about 30 slides. We're actually not too far off being done, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Is ChatGPT API free? It is not. You are charged, a bit like water charges, you're charged data coming in and data coming out, and you're charged per token. So I have a little thing after this about what a token is, because it's not quite related to a character, but as a rule of thumb, you can think of it as 3 characters. So you're charged for every 3 characters that you send to ChatGPT and that comes out. So I can show that in a second. But what I want to do now is I'm going to run this, and what it's going to do is it's going to loop through each of these, and it's going to provide a statement about whether it's positive or negative feedback from the customer, and it's also going to provide a little like custom message to the customer. Now imagine if we had the customer name in there, it would also be able to put their name in and provide a real bespoke message to them. And the other thing that I put in here, so this one here is in Spanish. So because you might have lots of customers and they may be in multiple languages, and your data might be unsorted, and that's totally fine for these AI models. They can handle that, and you don't even need to tell it. It will infer it from their own training. That obviously they unless I told it to produce all the messages in English, it's likely going to be like, okay, well, the review is in Spanish, produce the message in Spanish because the person reads Spanish. So I'm going to run this, and we're going to start having the results coming through. So we have a positive, a negative, positive, and then we have our little responses here. And if you look here, it now generated a new CSV file. That's not AI, that is just Python, but the responses are all using AI. So I'm just going to do a quick reveal in Finder, and I'm going to open these, and we're going to have 2 new columns now. So we started off with just the customer ID and the feedback, and now we have sentiment, positive, negative, and then we have a little response, which again is totally custom based off the prompt, which in this case was the feedback. And you can see here that the response figured out that it should be in Spanish for this one as well. You can change the programming of this by just using natural language. So if I was to say, actually, I want all these messages to be in French for some reason, or I want it to be a very formal tone, or I want it to be more of a friendly tone, you can use that as well. So it's fantastic. You can program just by using natural language. Another question here, can that be integrated into Google Play Console in order to read reviews on Google Play Store, maybe using Gemini? So what I'd say to that is, if the Google Play Store likely has an API, so you need to just pull in the reviews using the API just as normal, using Python or Node.js, whatever you want to use, and then hook it up with the OpenAI API. So you literally just need an OpenAI API key, which I store here, which I can't show you because it's you could then use my API key. Then you use the model. So I'm using the cheap and inexpensive model for this example because it's not a very complicated task that we're doing. So that's probably how I'd suggest that. See if they have an API for looking at reviews for the Google Play Console, and then just hook it up with something like ChatGPT. And in this case, we're using the backend, if you like, but for the purpose, I'm just going to call it ChatGPT. And then if you wanted to host that online, use something like Lambda, AWS Lambda, and then you can run it on a site on like a time period, like every 12 hours or something. You can pull the results in from Google Play and then produce your responses using OpenAI. So if you don't do that, you'll have to do it locally on your machine. It's going to be either leave your computer on all the time, or you're going to have to do it manually. So where'd my presentation go? There it is. Okay. Yeah, that was just a bit about API means application program interface. And you're charged in and out. Not very much, but you are charged. So someone asked about the charging before, and they're charged per token. So if I go to here, this gives an example. This is from the OpenAI website, and it gives a bit of an example about what a token is. So it's to say here, it's not mapped to a word, it's not mapped to a character, but as a rule of thumb, you can kind of think of it as 4 characters of text, of English text. And if I just go to OpenAI API pricing, so the pricing is changing all the time. It's going down, thankfully. but they do charge every time. So it's say it's $5 per million input tokens, and then $2.50 per million input tokens for that. It should have output tokens as well. Yeah, there's output tokens. So it's 15 USD for 1 million output tokens, and then 1 million for input tokens. If you need cheaper than that, GPT 3.5 will be the way to go, but it's not as smart. Now we have Perplexity. So I only started using this recently, and I'm starting to really like it. It's fantastic. So Perplexity is basically an AI search engine. So the founder's whole ethos on this is that every sentence or every statement that this makes needs to be backed up with a source, and it effectively the sources it uses is something on the internet. At the minute, this is probably the best AI search engine out there. Google is sort of slated to be producing their own, in which case this company might struggle because, you know, obviously search engine Google has the big monopoly in that. But right now, this is probably the best. So if we want to find information that's currently up to date, this Perplexity is the best way of doing it because it's going to give you sources so you can independently check yourself. So let's check this. So what is the current situation with the Boeing Starliner? So for anyone that doesn't know about the Boeing Starliner, there's currently 2 astronauts stranded on the ISS because the Boeing Starliner spacecraft had a bit of an issue with their thrusters and whatnot. So you can see here, these little like numbers here are the sources, but this will be up to date. And then what I find here as well is the related topics portion is very handy. It's like, what are the main technical issues currently affecting the Boeing Starliner, which is probably what I should have said at the start, but it gave like a good suggestion. I think, yeah, so we got helium leaks, we got thruster malfunctions, and it can give you dates. So sticking with the space theme, we'll say like, when is the next Starship launch? I probably don't even need to say SpaceX, but we'll say SpaceX. So ChatGPT's cut off is sometime in 2023, so it won't know anything about this, but this will. So the next SpaceX Starship launch is scheduled for June 5th, 2024, which is wrong. We're looking for number 5. So let's see if Perplexity can redeem itself. When is the 5th Starship launch? So it told us about 4, which already happened. Let's see if it can redeem itself with the 5th one. So it's given us a launch window. But again, the nice thing about it is it should be giving us sources. I've got it from here. So it gives us the opportunity to go and check. But I find the Perplexity is very good if you want to find information about topics that are up to date. And again, this is a startup, so this is not backed by Microsoft or any of these kind of guys. But they are going to struggle probably in a couple of months because Google are basically creating a clone of this. So I guess we'll see what happens. So moving on to image generation again. So this is probably one of my favorite image generators at the minute. This is called Midjourney. Its interface is a bit lacking, we'll say. So we'll do our best. So they have a web interface like this, but it's an alpha, which means it's very early stage. So I don't even think a lot of people have access to it. So we're going to use this, and then we're going to use the standard interface as well to show you in a minute, which is actually using Discord, believe it or not, just a messaging app. So you can type in your prompt, and then Midjourney is going to generate it, and it does the best job at the minute, I think. You've seen the images earlier with regard on DALL-E 3, which are okay, which will get better, I'm sure, but they were just okay. So it does take a bit of time for these to generate. So I'm going to have to think of things to say during this time. Have you looked into RAG and vector databases much? A little bit, yeah. I've actually, yeah. So there's a question about RAG. So someone, just for background, what RAG is. So RAG is retrieval augmented generation. So that's how you can give these large language models, we'll say long-term memory. So what you do is you take information from say your company. Say you have loads of SOPs or something, right? You put those through what's called an embeddings model, and that basically chunks up the data, so it takes the paragraphs, we'll say, and turns it into effectively a vector, which is a series of numbers. Puts that into a database, and then when you then say the SOP is in relation to cleaning off a machine or something like that, and you say, okay, how do I clean this machine? It's going to take that query, vectorize that query, and then do a search against that vector in your vector database and pull chunks of data that's related to that vector. And inherently, if it's related to that vector, it will be related to the query in terms of human readable terms. And then it's going to feed that to another model like ChatGPT or something, and it's going to clean up the information, because you're just going to pull back a bunch of random chunks of paragraphs about cleaning up this machine. It's not going to be like human readable. It's going to be all over the place. So they're going to use, then they use things like ChatGPT to clean up the response. That's why they call it retrieval augmented generation, because the retrieval augments the generation. So that is very handy, actually, RAG. But one issue, not issue, but one interesting thing with that is you can kind of clip the performance of your models doing that, because it's really informed by your data that's in your database. Then it really depends on that you have high quality data in your database, which you may do, in which case fantastic. So now we have a picture of a lion. What you can do is you can do things like zoom out, so that you can zoom out from these and it'll fill in the gaps. So if I do 2x here, it's going to start doing that again. And while we're waiting on that, I'm going to show you the old interface / still the current interface for many people, because that web interface is not available, we'll say, generally yet. So if you want to use Midjourney, for the most part, you have to use Discord, which is interesting. So what you do is you go to your direct messages, which is here, and you go to the Midjourney bot. Then you type /imagine, and then you type your prompt in. Let me go get my prompt. So this is just an example here that for like an actual work usage. So say you needed a graphic for a presentation in work. My paste does not work. What's wrong here? Old school. So now it's going to generate the image in the chat itself. And you can see the percentage done here. So while we're waiting on that, we'll go back to our other thing here. So it's a bit hard to see, but you can see it's zoomed out from the lion, and it's filled in the gaps. So what we can do as kind of an example of that it isn't just taking images from Google, is we can say a majestic lion standing on a rocky edge at dusk in the snow. And we're going to let that go now. We're going to go back to our stainless steel vessel. This is probably more what we want here. So it has these buttons. You might want one of these buttons for it. So U stands for upscale, and then V stands for variation. So if you select variation, so we'll select variation, it's going to produce variations on image 4. So now we should see 4 images that are in some way similar to this image. And then if we upscale them, then we'll get more options as well. So we're going to have to wait for this to finish now. So we'll jump back to our lion. So now we have lions in the snow. What these models are all very poor at is text. So if you want to create a graphic, so say you were in the safety department or something, and you wanted to create a safety graphic with text on it, it's very poor at doing text. They all are. They will get better, I'm sure, but at the minute they're all very poor at doing text. So you can see there it generated variations of V4. So in order to get more options for this, in terms of changing the aspect ratio and this kind of stuff, if we upscale one of them, and then now you can you can do zoom out, and you can vary the image slightly. So let's try do zoom out 2, and it's gonna zoom out 2 times, and then it's gonna try and fill in the gaps around it. This is gonna be in the center now. It's gonna fill in the rest of this building around it. The other thing you can do is you can vary the aspect ratio. So if I go here and I change it to, that was a portrait image, so I can change it to a square image. Have a look at our prompts, my pre-made prompts. Let's have a look. So now it's going to generate a square image for us. Yeah, and we'll upscale one of these. Upscale number 1 this time. Upscaling is usually faster than generating it. So you can see it's filled in the gaps on the way around. That's one interesting thing that it can do. And we're generating our manufacturing line here. So again, this might have an actual genuine use case. Say if you're doing a presentation or something, you might actually want an image like this, for example. And it's much better than, I'm going to put the same prompt now into ChatGPT, and we'll compare the results. But this is the kind of like lifelike style image that you get in Midjourney. And as of right now, ChatGPT just doesn't quite nail it. So generate an image. Oh, now you just do that. You just put it in put it in quotes. We'll let it take a crack at it. But what we should find is it'll generate something more kind of animated rather than lifelike. Yeah, so again, you can kind of see it's a bit more, no one's going to mistake this for being an actual plant or an actual production line. Whereas the Midjourney stuff is quite close to being realistic. So that's kind of why I prefer Midjourney. Just something, got a few minutes left. One thing is just about prompting. So there's kind of this notion about one-shot prompting where you ask it for the result straight away. But what I find is more useful is if you kind of lead it on a bit of a journey. So this sort of layering approach. So previously we said, we had an example where we said, write a Windows batch file to transfer CSV files from one PC to another. But so that was kind of the answer. But what we really want is how, what methods are there for transferring the files from one PC to another using a script? It's kind of more what we were, because there might be a better way of doing it. So I find that if you ask for the options, like if you treat ChatGPT almost as like one of your, like an employee that you have, they're like, okay, I want you to come up with the options for this, and then you just pick whichever is your favorite. So it's given an example here of using PowerShell, Robocopy, SCP. Just pick the one that you want, and you don't even need to name it properly. You can just go, yeah, item 2, and you can stop it here and just go item 2, and it'll understand that you meant the Robocopy one, and then start writing it out for you. Because what I find is if you don't want to tell ChatGPT the answer, because then you're not sure if it's hallucinating or not. So it can just make up stuff. So if you tell it something that isn't true, it will spit it back to you as if it is true. So it's kind of like confirmation bias almost. So you kind of need to lead it on a bit of a journey, be like, is this the right answer, or what are the methods for doing this, and it'll come up with answers. Like if I told it that like Robocopy doesn't exist, now it might be smart enough not to realize this, but like robocopy doesn't exist. So it's taking it there as, okay, it's not available on my system. But so you need to be kind of careful there, because if you tell it things, it can influence it. It will produce things back to you as if it's 100% fact, kind of confirming what you thought. So that's just something to be aware of. Yeah, and this is just another example. Like if it's what I find is, so like instead of asking it to write a paragraph on the Roman Empire, letting it pick topics. If you say like list 10 interesting things, and then you literally, like an employee, you just go, okay, now I want you to expand on number 4, or combine 4 and 5 together, or whatever. So I find that's a fantastic approach. Is don't tell it the answer, get it to give you the answer, and then you just pick whichever your favorite option is of the answers it has. Okay. So I suppose we got a couple of minutes left. Is there anything in particular people would like to cover for the last 5 minutes? So I find by giving it a role or direction, that means it leads to misunderstanding. I use that layering method to see how it would approach the task, and then give it a direction to feed it as block. Yeah, no, like for sure, there is definitely like a trial and an error to this, a little bit. Like if you tell it, like if you say that, if you were to say, oh, you don't know anything about programming, and then tell it to do some programming, it'll do a very bad job. So yeah, there is a bit of a trial and error piece to this. One resource I just want to share about prompting is this Anthropic prompt library. So Anthropic are the Claude people, the Claude 3 people, and they have released a quite substantial prompting library. So they have all these sort of areas, and then you can click whatever one you want, and then they give an example. So as an Excel formula expert, your task is blah, 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 whatever, and then the user input. So probably put that into the chat. That's very handy. And then you can also use, if you really do want to use the image generation piece, what you can do is you can get ChatGPT or whoever to actually generate the image prompts for you. So like generate a prompt for an image generator to produce images of pandas, whatever you want, and it'll kind of produce these sort of long, detailed prompts, and then you can just say no, 5 options, and then it'll produce these kind of long, detailed prompts that you haven't to go in and type it all out manually. Because what more likely it'll do is it'll produce a nice prompt for you, and then you can just go in and tweak a few bits, like you having to do it all yourself. Yeah, I can send out a copy. I'll send an email with a copy of the slides. That's no problem. Yeah, so I suppose that's kind of what I had in today's agenda. A couple of minutes if anyone wants to have any questions. What about video generations? So yeah, video is a good question. Yeah, so video generations, they have a model called Sora, where they produce video. It's not commercially available yet for like the average user. There was a demo released on their website. I'll probably show you actually. There was a demo released on their website, and they have given it, I believe, to some like big sort of Hollywood people, and they are experimenting with it. I wouldn't say they're using it in their day-to-day work at this stage, but they are experimenting with it. So here is Sora. So all these are allegedly all AI generated. There's a great one actually of a dog, if I can find it. There's a fantastic one with like dogs playing in the snow. Maybe I will be able to find it. Yeah. But anyway, these are all AI generated with Sora. So this is coming. So this is definitely something we're probably going to see. It's probably 5 years out before this, because there's a lot of compute needed for this. Like it's very expensive to produce these. So I guess we'll see. Someone asking earlier about trading indicators. What do you mean about trading indicators? Sorry, can you just expand on that question? Like trading stocks, or what's it in relation to? Yeah, so these are all AI generators. I can see this being very useful for video game design, producing sort of graphics for video games. There's been any projects that have actually, well, this must be oh no, this is the elephant one. Any projects that have actually used this yet? Still just kind of more of a demo. What about Word documents? Can these AI tools create them, or is it easy to copy and paste into Word documents? Funnily enough, ChatGPT can create a Word document, yeah. So if I go create me a template quote for a machine in Microsoft Word. So again, it has access to Python, so can actually produce Microsoft Word documents. Again, here is where you kind of have to be more explicit sometimes. So it might not actually produce the Word document. In this case, you just go, no, I want you to produce it. So we'll see what it does at the end here. So no, I want you to generate it. And you'll know if it's going to do it, because it'll say analyze, do this little analyzing, this little kind of analyzing graphic will come up. That's writing out the Python code in order to produce the document itself. So let's see how it gets on. So some of these features here, like generating Word documents and whatnot, are pretty early stage, but you can see how this could be very useful in a couple of years when it gets a bit better at it. So this is the analyzing thing I was talking about. When it's doing this, it's actually executing Python code in the background. The only reason you can see this is because I had this turned on here. They have a defaulted to turn off, so it just kind of looks like magic, but they're actually just using Python in the background. And then it gives you a download link to go and download the document that it's just after producing. So I should be able to open this. Let's have a look. My downloads. Machine quote. Let's open this up. And here is the machine quote that it produced. Possibly with better prompting on my part, it maybe could produce a better result. But another thing that it can do actually is very handy. Again, because it's got access to Python, it can do a lot of things that Python can do. So I can go convert to PDF, and it should be able to convert it to PDF. So you can see here how these AI models are effectively filling in the gaps or taking the role of like multiple apps. So now I don't have to use a PDF converter or any of this kind of stuff. You can it's all just by telling it to do it. And it's actually failing as well. And then it's realizing it's failing and then trying again. So I'm just looking at the questions here. I suspect trading forecast stocks, but have no experience in any thing. Yeah, so like these are just the way these models work is they basically just predict the next token. So for the purpose of this, we'll just say predict the next character in the word. So in terms of predicting stocks, you know, it's the one like ChatGPT, the commercial ones aren't going to be able to really do that. If maybe if you had access to bespoke training data, maybe you could create your own that did it, possibly, I suppose, but it's probably out of scope of this meeting, you know, yourself. Anyway, let's go ahead and generate its PDF by the looks of it. Yeah, so I can probably stay for another couple minutes. Does anybody have any other questions? You have local models that doesn't need connection to internet. Yeah, so you can use local models, yeah. So you're gonna need a well, not very powerful, but decently powerful computer. So if you want to run a local model, your best option is Llama 3. So you can literally download Llama 3. So you literally just download it, and then you can run it. Now it says you have to request access. You get an email. You just type in your stuff. You get an email, and you can download it. But you will need a reasonably powerful computer in order to run these. I tried to run it on my Mac here, and it was very slow. It didn't really work very well, and I was running the smallest one as well. But you can do it for sure. See our PDF's getting on. Okay, so our PDF is now created. Let's see how well it's done, how good of a job it's done. Not too bad. Yeah, so a lot of those sort of elements, converting to PDFs, creating Word documents, are probably things that it will get better at, but they can do them for the moment. Okay. So I guess I'll take a few more questions, and if there isn't any, I guess we'll just call it a night. Thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. Thanks. Hope you got a lot out of it. Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, come on. I suppose just before you go, is there anything that I didn't cover that maybe you'd like me to cover in a future one? Maybe. That's probably what I'd ask. Anything you want me to cover in a future talk? Thank you. Thank you. Cheers. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so Microsoft use OpenAI's backend effectively. So Microsoft is OpenAI really. Like Microsoft Copilot is GPT-4. So OpenAI has a very complicated ownership structure. They're like a charity with a commercial wing. It's a bit complicated. I don't really understand it, but Microsoft own a lot of the commercial wing because they invested, I think it was 10 billion, which probably seems like a bargain now, to be honest, given how valuable they are. But yeah, Microsoft and OpenAI are effectively the same thing at this point. So all of OpenAI runs on Azure, which is hardware provided by Microsoft.